And ladies and gentlemen, we are live. Back again. We've got our infamous friend, Kyle. David, why don't you send us
Welcome
home,
back,
buddy?
sir.
Appreciate you guys having me
Welcome
back.
back, everybody, to another episode of the Uncommon Man Podcast. I'm your host, David. This is Mike, and welcome back again, Kyle. What's going on, sir?
Appreciate you guys having me back on. Doing well. How about yourself?
Fantastic, buddy. Always good to see a
Same
beaming
shit.
face. All right, folks. So today's episode is going to be talking about fantasy football, specifically like what our approaches are in the draft. All three of us have experience with this. David and I have been putting together a segment if you guys have been following that. But me and Kyle actually had a draft last weekend. We also have an ensuing draft coming up next weekend. All three of us are in the Uncommon Man Fantasy League that we just started up for this season. Make sure that you follow that, guys. Like, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. And then throughout the season, what we're going to do is once a week, we're going to get together and talk shit, talk about what our rosters are coming up for the upcoming week, see if there's any injuries, updates, what people have had to do on the waiver wire. But in the meantime, we're going to get you guys set up. Today, we're going to talk about just our different approaches to the draft. After last week, me and Kyle were sitting there talking, and we're jarring back and forth as to how different our perspectives were and just our approaches and tactics while we were drafting. So without further ado, Kyle, why don't you go ahead and take us away, man? So what do you what's your primary spot that you look for, like the position that you look for right off the bat for the first round of the draft?
Sure. So I guess first question I got to ask is, given a spot to draft from?
So you're talking about specifically like from 1 to 6,
1 to 10, 1 to 12.
12?
Yeah,
So let's just go for first half. So between 1 and 6, because that generally kind of leaves you with about, I would say, 2 to 3 positions that are primary right there. So if you were in the first 6 of the draft, who's your general primaries? We all know Christian McCaffrey is going to be number 1. I think that's simultaneous across the board. We're all in agreement that Christian McCaffrey, as long as he stays on top and in his prime, he's going to be number 1 pick. But then there's a little bit of a gap from that point forward as to whether or not you want to go with the primary wide receiver, you want to go with the running back, or if you want to take a quarterback or a defense if you want. Hey, look at that. It's a crazy world, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, I'm not that bold, but let's see. If I'm drafting out the first 6 picks, I mean, obviously, like you said, the consensus number 1 overall is going to be CMC. After Christian McCaffrey, personally, I think I'm going to rep my boy out of Penn State. A little Saquon Barkley action there as well.
Nice. Okay.
Followed shortly up after that, I'd probably give it to Zeke. He's a mainstay. He's consistent year in, year out. I mean, with them having the 3 wide receivers of Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, now they got CeeDee Lamb. I mean, how are you going to stack the box against Zeke? So, if I can get one of those 3 running backs, I feel pretty confident. After that, it kind of becomes a little bit more washy. Some question marks. Alvin Kamara obviously had the injury last year, hurt his finish for sure. You got Dalvin Cook, could be a holdout. He still can't get that contract lined up. He's looking to make some money for his family, and they don't want to give him the big bucks yet. So it looks like he's going to hopefully play out his final year. We'll see. We've got a couple weeks left before kickoff. So I'd say that's probably my top 5. Maybe I could make the argument to move Michael Thomas ahead of Dalvin Cook. Personally,
Nice.
I'd probably put him in at the 6th spot just because I'm huge on the running backs, as you saw last week. I think I went back, running back, and then another back after that. And to be honest, in pretty much every draft that I do, I'm maxing out those running backs because if you can really nail one of those running backs, that's not only going to get the running, but also the catch portion, especially in a PPR league.
Right.
It's really like a cheat code, almost in the same sense of your running quarterbacks. So that's kind of what I'm looking for, especially in that first or second round, as long as I'm not drafting 12th and obviously the top 11 running backs went before me, then I'm going to obviously take a Michael Thomas, a Julio Jones, and so forth. But if I can lock in, even later on the round, someone like CEH, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, maybe a Miles Sanders, a Kenyon Drake, I'm going to feel pretty confident with my team having one of those guys as my studs.
Nice. I like it. I did see that approach, man, in by the sounds of it, running back. That's kind of the general consensus across the board for most fantasy leaguers. All the people, the draft experts and stuff like that, they like taking running backs early off the board. How about yourself, David? What are you looking for?
Yeah, so kind of the same thing as Kyle, but with everything that's going on this year, I think I'm gonna try a different approach. will this be the smartest approach? Who knows? I mean, it may be, it may kind of turn around and bite me in the ass. But, I think, yes, running backs, you do want to double up. You want to stack up on running backs, your quarterbacks, your wide receivers, but also your tight ends. I think
Nice.
this year you're going to see with things being so limited and, we suspected a lot of the up and coming running backs from last year and this year that came in. Of course, we had high praise. Injury bug is plaguing a lot of teams this year. So that right there kind of has me a little bit afraid. But one thing that kind of stays consistent is the tight end. The tight end market in the NFL, in my opinion, is getting very good, very strong. You have a lot of dominant tight ends all across the league from, Kittle, Kelsey, Fant, even the guy from Oakland,
Andrews,
Waller.
Yeah, Waller. I mean, dude, like the list goes on and on. Baltimore went out and got like 3, tight ends. So I think that right there is, if I'm looking for a safe pick, I think that's right. That's what I'm gonna kind of target right there.
Nice. I like it, guys. Well, I'm the unique breed in all this, and that's because every season that I've ever won, I could give a shit less about running backs. I'm not gonna lie to you. That is the most expendable.
Zero RB strategy, as evidenced by last week.
That is the most expendable position. And as soon as one of those, yeah. What did how many did I take? I got to be honest. The fourth one was just purely because I was
think you took
blitzed.
four.
Were you talking about your quarterbacks last week?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, and I think he waited. I mean, he was the prime example of zero RB. I mean, he took it to the nth degree. I think he waited till the 12th round or something like that.
And the funny thing is, not even concerned about my roster in the least bit, because I'll tell
when
you
the
what.
top running backs go down or they get COVID and you end up running away with the league, I'm going to be following suit with a case of beer heading your way.
It's not even that, dude. The biggest deal about it is you got to remember the most consistent players that you have on the team is always going to be your quarterbacks and your stable wide receivers. If you have a good stable of wide receivers and you have a dynamic quarterback or two, if you have 2 good quarterbacks on your roster, that's one less quarterback you have to play against next week. So if you take good quarterbacks back-to-back, I don't have to worry about playing against that dude who's going to put up 20 points on me almost guaranteed every week, the points per league, it doesn't matter which one it is. If you've got a top 10 quarterback, they're going to put up 20 points on you every single week. The running back could be a hit and miss week. He could have 5 points one week, and he could have 20 points the next week. So granted, there's 2 of them, but my approach for that is taking at least the top 2-ish quarterbacks off the board as fast as possible, and then letting it ride from that point with wide receivers. I would say, where were you guys generally at from about, let's go 3rd to 4th round? What are you guys generally looking for at that point in time?
David, you can go ahead and lead this one off.
Yeah, so when we start getting later in the rounds, yes, I'm looking for running backs. I'm looking for running back value. I'm looking for the running backs that, kind of like, your Alvin Kamara, Miles Sanders, Christian McCaffrey. Later in the rounds, that's what I'm looking for.
You're never going to get those later in the rounds.
If I'm looking for value running backs in later rounds. So
you're looking for kind of like your breakouts.
So after about round 2, you can. After about round 2, you can
like
get
Mike, who's going just straight quarterbacks. Okay, running backs are dropping. I mean, because a lot of people have the same, mindset. Running backs are a dime a dozen. Running backs are expendable. So in some leagues, yes, the better running backs, they get bumped down, they get pushed down, and so you can catch a diamond in the rough there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I guess in the same token, in the same breath, for me, kind of after that 15th, 16th running back, I start getting really concerned with just the consistency you're going to see with the running back. For example, after you get past, the 6 or 7 running backs I was talking about in the first round, you start getting towards your Melvin Gordons, your James Connors. They get into situations where I'm worried about a 1A, 1B approach. I'm also starting to get worried about injuries. If it's a system like Indy, Baltimore, some of the other teams where you have a rookie who could possibly replace the incumbent, I start getting kind of concerned that midway through the season, they're going to get replaced and they're going to be on the back burner, and I can't count on them for that consistent floor at the very minimum on my team. So, kind of my approach, going off of what David was saying, I'm still loading up on those backs. I see this year as one of the years where wide receiver is super deep. You'll see it in our draft here in just over a week. But I'll probably go running back, depending on who may fall on the wide receivers in the third round. At the very least, I'm going to take one wide receiver in the first 4 rounds. I want to have someone who I can put in there and not have to worry about plug and play week in, week out. If I can have someone such as Robert Woods fall to me, a Juju Smith-Schuster, maybe in the third or fourth round, and I can say, you know what, they're not possibly a top 10 wide receiver, but I should be able to count on them for top 15 production. And having that along with, take, for example, the stack that I had last week. Took Zeke, I think, at the third pick, way back through. He fell a little bit farther than I expected him to. Got Miles Sanders, and then Aaron Jones on the back end. So just to have 3 running backs that I don't have to say, are they the guy that's going to get the ball when it gets, within the 5-yard line? Or, are they going to be the primary ball carrier week in, week out? Just having those studs that can also catch the ball is kind of the way that I approach my league. And then to your point, looking for some of those, solid tight ends, like you said, the league is pretty deep when it comes to that end. So if I can get someone like Noah Fant's a great option. For me, I'm also targeting like a Mike Gesicki, and a couple of those other tight ends that could possibly break out. Maybe who's his name from the Jets? He's another athletic guy that I really like. Chris Herndon, another guy who could really break out on one of those teams where their pass catchers are kind of iffy, so they could really end up being one of those top 3 options for the quarterback.
Agreed. So for me, after I take my QBs off the board and let everybody laugh at me, my next priority is actually the tight end position. So because every season, that is the number one issue that I have ever encountered is having a tight end that's going to be reliable. That people kind of overlook it or poo-poo at it because it's just one spot on the roster. But if your tight end's only bringing in 8 points and you need 9 to win the week, some of the tight ends, man, especially if they go down or they're not really much of a red zone threat, they're not getting touchdowns, they're not getting, even 50 yards per game, getting you 5 points, and, a lot of them coming up 2.5 short. I mean, that's a good chunk off your roster right there. So if someone's got a strong running back room or a strong wide receiver room, they're going to mulch it. So if you're looking for a balance, I feel like a tight end's a good start at this position because Kyle impressed upon it. It is a very deep wide receiver league. So at this point in time, I'll be looking towards my tight ends, maybe my wide receiver ones, one or the other, depending on who's still on the board.
And you went with one of the tight ends that I really like this year, Mike. You went with Mark Andrews, I think, in the third or fourth, which is pretty fair value for him, depending on your league. With them shipping off Hayden Hurst down to Atlanta, it's just him as the primary tight end. I mean, you look at that team, yes, they're a primary rushing team with Lamar, with Mark Ingram, now J.K. Dobbins and so forth. Really, after Hollywood Brown, they don't have anyone else who can catch the ball, and that's where Mark Andrews comes in, and he's like your Kelsey, he's like your Kittle, your Ertz. He's a mismatch nightmare when it comes to lining up. If they put a linebacker on there that can't keep up with him, or they put someone smaller on him and he just bullies them around. I mean, he's going to go for a 15-yard play, every one out of the 2. And then when you get in the end zone, my goodness, just throw it up to the guy. He's probably 6'4" or more, and he'll catch it, 9 times out of 10. So having one of those guys, to your point, I was in a situation last year where my tight end just wasn't performing. Thankfully, lucked out and got someone like Jared Cook, who's a tight end machine. But, if you're really trying to play the waiver wire and pick up a tight end mid-season, it's difficult.
Yeah, and it's tough, dude.
And I hate doing it in the draft, but to lock in someone at the tight end position and know that you can count on them week in and week out, I'd rather do that than just playing roulette at the tight end position, throughout the season. Yeah,
it's a spoiled britches this year with wide receiver position, which like I said, Okay, I've said my piece. You guys know where I'm at for 3 and 4. So we start getting into kind of the mid rounds. Now we're like 5, 6-ish. What are you guys looking for? David, what do you got?
You know, man, I'm just kind of, you know, this is the part where I kind of struggle. Like I'll hit hard on the first couple rounds, then, hey, you know, my strategy really kind of gets hit hard at at this point in the draft. I would like to know what do y'all do and how y'all been successful drafting that later in the draft.
Go for it, buddy.
Sure. So we're talking, rounds 5 through 7, sounds like?
Yeah, mid rounds.
Okay. I mean, for me, so if I'm going off the strategy from before, locked in kind of 2, 3 running backs that are studs. I've at least gotten 1 wide receiver. I'm coming back through and I'm looking for some solid, possible ceiling from some wide receivers, maybe some running backs who could break out. For me, some players that I'm targeting in those ranges, Ronald Jones out of Tampa Bay.
Nice,
A
good one.
lot of people
Yeah.
were concerned about them drafting, what's his name? Vaughn. And as far as I know, he's been told that he's going to be a special teams player. So at this point, Ronald Jones seems to be the guy. I mean, you got Tom Brady at quarterback.
Yeah.
He's going to be dumping off the ball, a decent amount. And also with them having Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you got Gronk, you got OJ Howard, Cameron Brate, and everyone else.
Yeah, jeez,
It's gonna
dude.
be
How
tough
many do
to
they
stop
need?
that box. Yeah. So Ronald Jones is, he really showed promise. He had a really disappointing rookie year, and also sophomore year. He's really starting to come into his own. He get him out into open space. He can be dynamic. He can, be a little bit like Miles Sanders. He can, pick up a couple extra yards you wouldn't see. Maybe juke someone out. So I like someone like Ronald Jones.
Well, they went from Cutter to Arians, so I mean that's night and day.
I honestly can't believe that Dirk Cutter is still an OC in the NFL.
Yeah, that's
I'm
wild
not
to
a
me.
big fan of Dirk at all.
Yeah, where's he at now? Jacksonville?
Yeah, I think he's back in Atlanta.
Is he in Atlanta? Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somewhere over there.
Downgrade.
Sorry, I mean it.
No, you're good.
I mean,
So that's probably one of the running backs that I'm targeting. For all the guys in my league, if you're listening to this, wait until after our draft on Saturday so that you don't know what I'm going to do before the draft. Wide receiver wise, I'm looking for someone who can put up elite numbers, who's maybe not the number 1 option in their team. My go-to in a lot of drafts is going to be Marvin Jones. I mean, the dude is just
a good one.
consistent, but he's super quiet. I mean, he's performing. I think the stats I was looking at, he averages for the last couple of years 60 yards a game, which is okay, not great, not terrible, but that's 6 points right there,
Right.
ESPN scoring. And then if it's PPR, he's getting probably 4 or 5 catches. So it's, and then his average over the last couple of years has been half a touchdown per game. He averages 8 to 9 touchdowns on a season. And you're looking at 11, 12, 13 points per week in PPR from a wide receiver. And, he has Matthew Stafford thrown to him. Matthew Stafford, one of my guys that I try and go for later on in the draft, was on pace for 5,000 yards last year. I think 38 touchdowns and 10 picks. I mean, that's an amazing season from a quarterback who's, not a Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, and so forth. So for me, that's one of my stacks I try and go for, get that Matthew Stafford and Marvin Jones connection. And, I mean, they're really trying to push for a running game, but at the same time, when you got Kenny Golladay, you got Marvin Jones, they can air it out on defenses as well.
Agreed, dude. Yeah, so this is when I'm going into my later rounds doing the exact same thing as you. It's like, all right, well, now's where I'll start looking for a running back. If I can scrounge one up that's like, okay, you know what, maybe this guy's going to be first or second stringer, like what I did this year. I took the second running back from Green Bay because Aaron Jones, the guy's only capable of taking so many plays, and they had kind of a running back committee going on last year with Jamal Williams, and the guy had a good season. So even if he's the major workhorse, yeah, Aaron Jones is going to be the PPR dream because of the fact that he's a pass-catching running back. But at the same time, you got Jamal Williams, who's still taking the majority of the pistol formations or under center snaps. So
does A.J. Dillon scare you at all?
It's going to be weird with that one, man. He definitely looks like a promising candidate. I don't know how that's going to work though, because the fact Matt LaFleur, man, he's kind of old school when it comes to the whole you're going to earn your place on the team, which justifiably so. But I think if Jamal Williams had faltered last year, I think that it would be A.J. Dillon's spot to lose at that point in time. But Jamal Williams still had a really good season. I think he was averaging like 4.7 yards per carry, which is pretty good for a backup. So,
And I think you have the right thought process on that. A lot of people are like A.J. Dillon, he's going to, possibly impede and take over that running back, position. But I'm like you. I think he's going to take over possibly Jamal Williams' workload, but I don't see him eating into Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is in a contract year, and I think him and Jamal Williams would be the 1-2 punch in Green Bay.
Yeah. I mean, as long as they don't run Aaron Jones into the ground in the first 5 weeks, which is completely plausible because, let's not – they did – that. Here's my problem with Aaron Jones. He's a great beginning of the season, but if you're looking for longevity out of that guy, I mean, they didn't draft any wide receivers in this. This is the deepest wide receiver draft that we've probably had in NFL history. They didn't give Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers any support. And it's like, why? Was this a statement to Rodgers? Because you didn't do any of the other team any justice either. So there's a lot of frustration that goes on there. And like I said, if Aaron Jones gets injured, I mean, he's basically going to have to eat his LaFleur's going to have to eat his balls and expect Rodgers to bail them out every week. So
they're going to run that guy into the ground this year.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
No, I was saying like Aaron Jones, they're going to run him into the ground this year because outside of Davante Adams, you have no other options on that offense. Like you can't just chunk it up to Davante Adams and think he's going to yak him all the time.
Right. Yeah, and
did they take from like Carolina or whatever, but then he ended up opting out?
Yeah, I know you're talking
guy
about.
Who can't
speedster. Yeah, their speedster guy.
He was definitely Funchess.
Yeah,
yep.
There you go.
Sorry, so you were saying A.J. Dillon. Who else are your mid-round guys you're looking for?
Yeah, no, so that's when, like I said, I'll start looking for like, what Dave was talking about in the first place. That's when I'll start looking for like maybe a third-rate starting running back, like somebody like Chris Carson or something like that from the Seahawks, or Kareem Hunt or something like that. And then the other thing I'm going to be doing at this point in time is I'm going to be looking for my second wide receiver. I want to ensure at this point in time that I have a starting roster for at least about 6 guys. So, like I said, I got my QB, 1 running back, both my wide receivers, my tight end. And then from that point forward, we'll go on to the next section, which so rounds 8, 9-ish, what are you guys generally looking for? Or 8 through 10-ish, what are you guys generally looking for at this point?
Dave, you can lead it off again.
Yeah, so I think at this point, I'm definitely looking into the rookie pool, the rookies that were drafted a little bit later on in the draft. Not sure. So pretty much I'm looking from anybody, 4th, 5th, and on at this point. And also you're looking at anybody who is that's kind of like 20 and below, ranked in the NFL 20 and below in their position groups. Kind of at that point. With the rookies this year, it would have been better in years past because at least you would have had some kind of preseason to kind of know, like, okay, this person shows X, Y, and Z, but you're going completely blind eye into the rookie pool this year outside of the first 3 rounds. So that's why I'm looking at 4th and kind of below.
I love it, dude.
That's a good
Perfect.
Point. Yeah. It's kind of the scary thing with fantasy this year. I mean, with COVID going on, they're limiting the press that's able to be there. They're also telling the press, since they're not going to have their preseason games, that they're limited as to what they can share with the general public. So we're getting just secondhand reports as to what's going on in camp. I mean, we're getting some videos. I don't know if you guys saw today. David Montgomery went down with a groin injury. It looked nasty. I mean, the dude, untouched, just dropped to the ground. I guess they carted him off. Supposedly it might be better than what it looked like, but we'll see. But, I mean, we're just going off of people who, yes, they follow the team, week in and week out. But at the same time, we're not getting to actually see play against another team. So to David's point, yeah, you can have some really good rookies at this point, 8th and 9th round. To kind of piggyback off of that, I think for myself, looking at someone like a Henry Ruggs, who could possibly be the number 1 guy in Oakland. I'm a big fan. I watched the videos of Jerry Jeudy and that footwork. I mean, I don't know how anyone in the NFL is going to be able to cover him. I mean, It's insane. He's another great guy that I'm looking at. If I'm looking for someone who could really just explode and come out of nowhere, maybe I'm looking for – I usually go for another rookie that's in a muddled kind of backfield. maybe like a DeAndre Swift, Kerryon Johnson, he can't stay healthy. Maybe I'm shooting for someone like him. Maybe I'm banking on Mark Ingram, filing for ARP, retiring, and him taking over the backfield or someone else. So, I'm trying to – one of my tips that I always have is, shoot your shot. At the end of the day, you have your rankings, but don't just go off of someone else's rankings. Put your own, kind of zest on it. Go in there, and there's a couple of players that I'm 20 spots higher on than the consensus. And on draft day, I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to say I want this guy. And if he breaks out, I'm not going to let anyone in my league, forget that I went with that guy, even after they're razzing me for going early on him. At the same time, if they suck, then I might be dropping them after week 3. So it's one of those things you got to be ready to roll the punches, but at the same time, have fun with it.
I love it, guys. So I 100% agree. So at this point in time is exactly that. I'm looking for any of my sleepers, anybody that I feel is going to be a breakout character, for the simple fact that like a Jalen Reagor at this point in time. I mean, I most likely took him earlier on in the draft, but the guy has no competition in whatsoever in Philadelphia. I mean,
no
his
one
only
can stay healthy. Yeah,
they can't stay healthy or they opted out. So you're looking at a guy that they drafted in the first round. I mean, we know what Carson Wentz can do with junk. The guy still had, even between injuries and playing with crap last year, the guy still had 4,200 yards passing. I mean, that's sheer insanity, dude. So, I mean, if he's going to throw the football, that offense is made for him to pass. So if he's only got a couple options, then he's going to go to one of them. So that's where I'm looking at him. The other thing that I'm knocking out at this point in time is my top defense. So I want to ensure that this is where I have to do my research personally, and I can't really rely on anybody else. I have to sit there and look around the league and assess who's the deepest at what positions, where I think it's going to be really beneficial. Then one thing I'm always looking for is pass rush. If a team has great pass rush, that automatically opens up the rest. That can fill so many gaps for any holes that they have on the rest of the roster.
And it's a lot of points for defense scoring too.
Right, exactly.
Back, the fumbles, yeah.
The other thing people don't take into account, if you have a good defense, that generally is going to end up relating to or correlating to a decent offense, just for the simple fact that if you can find that happy medium, that nice chemistry and balance, then the defense is staying off the field long enough to where they can recover. The offense is giving them enough time to do that, but that generally also translates into points. So
yeah, like if you look at the best defenses around the league and you look at their offenses are pretty well balanced. So I completely agree with that one.
Exactly.
Sure.
So right. This is where I'm taking into account how solid the offense is before I go ahead and make my decision on who I'm going to take for my defense as well too. Because I don't want my let's say I take last year's Tampa Bay defense, right? Tampa Bay's defense was good. A lot of people, they poo-pooed on them because of the fact that they didn't have very high fantasy points. Well, the defense was really good. That's a stout defense. Nothing changed from last season to this season. If anything, they still got better. The difference was the fact that they were on the field every 3 seconds for the fact that the quarterback kept turning his football over. I mean,
interception. Shit,
he was the most frustrating quarterback to own last year. I mean, Jameis Winston would have, going into halftime, 2 picks, 147 yards, and no touchdowns. But at the end of the day, he would end up with 20 points because he's a slinger. I mean, he'll sling the ball down the field. But you said, I mean, he's going to turn over the ball in that first half, and the defense is going to be, on their heels, really trying to just keep the other team out of the end zone. And that's the unfortunate part is if you don't have someone who can manage the clock, keep the defense, give the defense enough time to actually catch your breath, like you were saying, then they're going to get screwed over.
Right. I mean, same principle is going to apply for like Philly's defense this year. All right. They just don't have the firepower. They have really good players. They're going to put up points, but they don't have the firepower to be going at least 50 to 60 yards every single drive. Whether or not it ends up being whatever points they put on the board's irrelevant. But the fact that 40 or 50 yards is enough of a break for the defense to recover, get back on the field, time's burned off the clock. Then you got your defensive line that's stacked at that point in time. They can go rush the quarterback, whatever they need to do. So I'm
curious, Mike, what are your defenses that you're targeting, in those rounds?
Well, you know what my number one defense is, and I still think that –
Is it a homer pick? I can't remember who you took.
It's a homer pick, yeah, for sure. So, yeah, dude, they're so deep. when it comes. They've got a modicum of players in the backfield. Their inside linebackers has been kind of anemic lately, dude. They've been dropping off like flies, which is very concerning. But when I took them, first off, we didn't have those issues last week. It's just been this week they've gotten injured. But the other thing about it is the defensive line and their outside linebacking core is so stacked that like there's pretty much it's an endless supply of pass rushers. You look at it all the way across the board. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if their entire offensive line going into the second string didn't make the Pro Bowl this year. Like that's how brutal they are. So
yeah, like I wouldn't worry too much about the linebackers because if we go with what Vic Fangio wants to do, he wants to run more of a 6 defensive back scheme. You know, in certain packages, I wouldn't worry too much about the inside linebacking core.
Right. And so my number 2 at that point in time would be Tampa, for what it's worth. I think San Francisco is a good team. They've got a lot of talent. I think that was a big loss for them. I know that they picked up Kinlaw, but losing what's his nuts to the Colts.
Armstead. No,
yeah,
not Armstead.
No, not
was Armstead?
No,
well, that was for San Fran. Yeah.
He was the other.
You're talking about the Bucks there, right?
Yeah, DeForest Buckner. DeForest Buckner.
Yeah.
Oh, for 49ers, yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people think that a lot of people are on board for the 49ers being the best defense. First off, their cornerbacks and their safeties they're not what they used to be. All of them are aged. They're pretty much past their prime. Their inside linebacking core is not great. Whereas you look at Tampa Bay, dude, they've got the number 1 pass rusher of last season. Who, by the way, what team did he come from? So that's what's up. Number 1 sack leader, baby. Then you had Devin White, their pick from LSU last year, that inside linebacker. The guy's a freak.
Yeah,
freak, dude. That was my number 1 pick that I was hoping the Broncos would go for, and obviously he wasn't going to be on the board at number 10. So, yeah, I mean, and then their cornerbacks are really underrated. I can't remember their names off the top of my head right now, so forgive me on that one. But they've also got what we were talking about earlier. They've got such a stability on the offensive side of the ball. They proved last year they're a good defense, a very good defense. Now this year, they get plenty of downtime because we know Tom Brady is going to move the sticks. So that would be another good defense for me to target. So, but I will heed to you guys. What in this position would you guys go for?
Let's keep it rolling, Dave.
Defense?
Yeah.
Or what?
Yeah, let's go with defense.
So, I mean, fuck, Mike, you kind of took mine because I was thinking, Tampa Bay all the way because of Tom Brady and Gronk in the way that they've assembled that offense. But if I had to go outside of that, I'm thinking Baltimore may be a pretty good defense, especially with getting Derek Wolfe and also improving on what they did last year. But also you got to look at the defensive coordinators as well. The defensive coordinator from Baltimore, he is solid. He is a solid defensive coordinator. And so that's also what I'm looking at too when I'm picking the defense.
Nice. That's a good pull. I didn't even think of that. So that's
you
a good
feel
point.
pretty confident with them telling Earl Thomas to leave town and take his habits of sharing women with him?
Of course.
I'm gonna miss
Earl Thomas, for the great player that he was, he's really turned out to be like a AB.
Exactly.
So again, I don't know if he's suffering from CTE because if you look at the way he plays and the way he delivers hits, he could be suffering from some kind of head injury up there. And it's been going on from when he's with the Seahawks and the way that he left that organization, from the debacles that happened over the offseason into now. It's a trend that's going on. So, somebody needs to kind of pick up on this before it gets to the point to where it's just fucking out of hand.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He'll go to Dallas. I mean, he'll go to Dallas. They'll fucking take him.
No way, dude. Jerry Jones, man, that guy's all class. He doesn't take any problem child.
Oh man,
what are you talking about? So, what about you? Who are you looking at for defenses, Kyle?
Man, I'm gonna sound like a homer too, but I love the Steelers this year. I think having them back from elbow surgery.
It's not bad though.
I mean, to build off of our previous podcast, them trading for Minkah Fitzpatrick, T.J. Watt being on that defense, Joe Hayden and so forth. For me, whenever I'm looking at a defense, and I'm a guy who I'll let the defenses be picked off the board before me. If someone wants to take the Steelers or the other one that I really like to go to is the 49ers, if someone wants to take those defenses, that's fine. I'll wait till the end and try and take someone because especially this year, not having, all the preseason games, I'm kind of unsure as to how they're going to perform against some of the NFL's best offenses. So for me, the way that I kind of look at and research the defenses is I look at the first quarter of the season. I look at who are they playing the first 4 weeks because I'm one who I'll play more of the matchups instead of necessarily sticking with one defense for the whole season. So when I'm looking at the first 4 weeks for both the 49ers and then also the Steelers, I see a lot of potential. I see a lot of potentially bad offenses at the same time. So the Steelers, week 1, they got the Giants. I mean, I think Daniel Jones is going to be a solid quarterback in the league, but I don't put them in the top 10 offenses of the league. And I think that they're really turnover prone. I think Daniel Jones can throw the ball, but I think at the same time he can still make some, younger QB mistakes. Week 2, sorry, I got the boys in the background with me. They got the Broncos, so we'll see, if Drew Lock turns over the ball or, maybe the running backs make a couple mistakes. Week 3, they got the Texans. Should be interesting to see how that offense is, losing
that's a real coin flip at this point, dude.
Yeah, and DeAndre Hopkins. I should have mentioned him earlier, but one of the other wide receivers that I'm targeting in those mid rounds, I think Brandon Cooks is going to have a stud-like year. I mean, he's pretty much a lock for 1,000 yards. And probably 7 to 8 touchdowns. So he could be the top guy in Houston.
So you're taking Cooks. I'm going with Fuller. I think Fuller's going to end up being the break, or he's going to end up being the primary for that offense. So
if you give him your hamstring, I'll take Fuller every single year. But I don't think that
they improved the offensive line though.
I mean, they traded for what's his face?
And they've got Deshaun Watson.
They traded for the guy
Tunsil.
Tunsil. They gave away all that draft capital and then he kind of struggled for the past year or so.
Well, Billy O. Stooge, as Pat McAfee likes to call him. Billy O. Stooge.
I want to be higher on Houston, but when every time Deshaun Watson hikes the ball, he's under so much duress.
Yeah, poor guy.
It's hard for me to believe in that team when he's running for his life literally every single play.
Yeah, dude, he's got all the talent and capability to win a Super Bowl. He's our modern Russell Wilson, like Russell Wilson in his prime. Not saying Russell Wilson's not good. He's still really good. But like Russell Wilson in his prime with no help on the offensive line whatsoever. So, and Tunsil, let's not kid ourselves. The guy is massively overhyped. I don't understand why he didn't grade out well in PFF anything, but yet people still seem to amp him up like he's a great left tackle. And I didn't see
Texans go and give him like $20 million a year because hey, we got to sign him because we gave away 2 firsts.
Right.
We don't have an option.
Gosh.
Yeah, but it's crazy, dude. It was like hand in the bush kind of deal because one hand these guys were sitting here talking about all these offensive linemen that are doing well this year, all these great left tackles, and then they'd be like, yeah, Laramie Tunsil stunk. And then they'd be like, coming into this next season, Laramie Tunsil is going to be great. It's like, well, he hasn't been great since Miami drafted him. So, I mean, the guy's been exposed in every single game he's played in. So I don't really understand that. Deshaun Watson's constantly running right. But
don't take tackles out of Miami. I think we've all got PTSD from this shit. Do not take an offensive lineman out of Miami. Fuck that.
No, what are you talking about? We had Juwan James, dude.
Keyword had.
We never had that guy. Jesus, man. Can you imagine? Just think about that, bro. Just because of his size, that guy is getting paid more to sit on his ass this year than you and I will make. All 3 of us will make for the next probably 3 years combined.
Yep.
That is insanity to me. Insanity. But, I mean, that's what happens when you get the short end of the DNA stick. So,
it's life, brother.
Can't fault him for that one.
Got to do that office job.
All right, folks. Well, with that, Kyle, man, so grateful for having you on. Thanks, buddy. I really appreciate your insight. We're excited to it.
Yeah. Real quick, everybody, I think it's safe to say, you'll start seeing Kyle more regularly, as different pods come on, as we start doing different things with the channel, just kind of getting different spins, just kind of introducing different concepts. So just get familiar with the face and name.
Exactly. Yep. Especially for hockey, we still got the playoff season going. his team's out. My team's probably going to be out pretty soon. So anybody that's an Avs fan, you guys are pretty pissed right now. If you guys are Lightning's fans, you're not pissed because Tampa just beat Boston 7-1. So that was a real close game. And it's not looking like it's going to get any better for Boston. But that'll be something that we'll be talking about in a further pod. At this point in time, though, guys, I appreciate everything. That'll wrap up our fantasy session. So, Kyle, thanks for having you back. David, go ahead and send us home, bro.
All right, everybody, real quick, just a call to action. Like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, all that wonderful good stuff, okay? All right, fellas, it's been a pleasure. Y'all have a good night.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks, David.
Absolutely.
Night.